Welcome to Fast Effect Double Speed Magic the Gathering from ELD's Time Vault games. We've got Bug Death Shadow versus Burn, a matchup that I actually have a bit of experience with. I'm not going to lie, I've got some kind of rules in my head about this matchup. We'll see if these players kind of follow it. I think for Burn, you cannot afford to throw any Burn at the Bug Shadow player until they are below that 13 life. You got to do the initial damage with creatures. If you're throwing burn spells at their face, you're just doing their job for them, and they'll generally be able to out-tempo you as the game progresses and their death shadows get more and more lethal. But if you're able to lower their life total to that 13 range and then use your burn, you're going to quickly overwhelm their resources. There are a lot of important cards in this matchup, and so far Ben has access to them. Now he is using a lava spike to the face here to get an extra 1 damage out of his Swift Spear. And we'll see how this ends up playing. A Thoughtseize on top of the library. Not great in this matchup. Thoughtseize taking a burn spell, not really accomplishing very much. But already, if Matt has a Death Shadow, he could actually get that down and completely stop this onslaught. If he grabs a fetch land, he'll go down to 8. We'll see if he gets a 3/3. We got to imagine he's got a Death Shadow in hand. And will Ben have enough burn to finish this last 8 damage? That really is the name of the game. You don't want to get Death Shadow close to death. You really need to get them out of there. And Watery Grave. Oh no, a Brainstorm. Oh no. Well, this is a disaster. That was absolutely the turn. Oh, I'm sorry. That was during his end step. Phew. That was during the end step. So we do have a Death Shadow, which is a 4/4, and is going to stop any attacks without additional burn. We've got a Lava Spike to the face, and Stubborn Denial, a card that becomes a hard counter. He's going to Brainstorm. I don't know if they're currently playing it. I haven't actually taken a look and seen what people are doing right now in Death Shadow. Force of Negation is an incredibly solid magic card and does crowd out a lot of the other possible options. Death Shadow even larger. And this is a matchup where you're certainly okay committing multiple Death Shadows to the board. Anything running white Swords to Plowshares will very often just punish that play, killing all your Death Shadows for only 1 white mana. Eidolon of the Great Revels gets dazed. And a Gurmag Angler, additional ground support. Matt declining to get in for 6. Now faces down 3 creatures. He's going to need to get going at some point. Think about Death Shadow is if they do hit you, it hits back way harder. Let me know if you would have swung with the Death Shadow there and got in 6 damage. Chain Lightning going upstairs. Down to 4. Lightning Bolt. This will put him down to 1. A Force of Will pitching Daze. Ben now Hellbent, but Matt sitting at just 3 life. A Wasteland is some protection against Price of Progress, but this is a super dangerous situation. Another Monastery Swift Spear. Dismember, paying 2 life. Going to 1. And this is actually going to do it if Ben swings out. Just 2 blockers left. Matt down to 1. I think both players may have punted there. That Dismember would have put him down to 1, and all-out swing with those creatures would have pushed through lethal, so there was a little bit of a punt, and no, how about you? And then back to Burn winning. And Death Shadow, I'll tell you, I love this deck, and it is one of the few times in the last couple of years where I've sat down to play Magic where I've felt like I really needed to think about every single line because it's so different. I think it's one of the more challenging decks to play optimally. Now, it is still a Delver deck that can get free wins. Don't get me wrong. There are plenty of games where you can just steamroll somebody, but you may not play perfectly in those games and still get there just because of the strength of the strategy. I'm talking about getting out of Delver, protecting it, going after their mana base with Wastelands. As we saw, Matt has Stifle as well. There are plenty of games where you can just absolutely steamroll people, but playing flawlessly with this deck I find to be a real challenge, and one that I really enjoyed when I was playing the deck. Pretty much every single tournament I played in, there were several matches where I would be able to go back and contemplate my lines and really take a look at it because it's about trade-offs. It's not... Magic in general is trade-offs. It's very rare that there are lines that are absolutely correct. Usually there are several lines that are possibly good, and then there are a bunch of lines that are inaccurate to say that they're not as good as other lines. So those are mistakes. And then there are straight up blunders where it's just like an absolute error, which is just a disaster. So that's generally the way I try and categorize plays in Magic. Is you've got good lines, you've got inaccurate lines, which are like the good lines but worse, so you shouldn't be doing them ever. And then there are blunders, which are things that just straight up are disasters. Like they don't get the goal to happen at all, the goal being winning. So that said, very often with decks like, Eureka Tell, there's only like one line to consider, or there's just not that many decent choices compared to Death Shadow. So when to go off, how many counters to have, those are definitely parts of a show and tell deck. But with Death Shadow, every single land you play, every single card you play, how it relates to your life total, all of the complex situations that arise out of combat. For example, I think Matt may have been able to win that game if he swung with that Death Shadow. I don't know. I'd have to rewatch it. That was my kind of initial thought in that situation, is he's going to have to start turning things sideways. Similarly, Ben used his burn early and turned on that Death Shadow. So had he not done that, I believe he would have actually been able to burn Matt out. So there are just so many different decision trees that branch off of this deck, particularly in this matchup, which is a fascinating one, given that burn has the ability to attack your life total, which is a strength and a weakness for Death Shadow, but also as a control deck. Burn can actually play the control role against Death Shadow, given that the only early plays it has available to it is that Delver of Secrets. They can't really jam a Death Shadow early, and they also can't really get a Gurmag out easily. And this is like an ideal draw here for Ben. A pair of Goblin Guides. Exactly how you draw it up. And Matt may be considering like a Dismember. Now we're going to have a Brainstorm in response to this Goblin Guide. At the very least, he can get a couple of lands out of this. Some card advantage that could be very helpful if he stabilizes. And we've got a swing. Oh, wow. We have a fetch land, Ben fetching in response. There's a couple of Goblin Guide triggers on the stack still. A Watery Grave coming in. And a Delver of Secrets on top stops that card advantage potential. And this Delver is going to feel underwhelming already at a disadvantage against these 2/2s. And even when he flips, not a situation where Delver can afford to start getting aggressive. A Death Shadow. Oh, a pair of Death Shadow. All right, so we got some 2/2s. We'll see what Ben can do. Matt with a solid recovery there. Fetching that Arid Mesa. Quite a variety of mountains here from Ben. We've got, looks like Beta. I have no idea what that newest mountain is from. Eidolon of the Great Revels. Hits a Force of Will, and now these Death Shadows big enough that they can easily destroy a Goblin Guide in combat. Delver's going to be able to start chipping in there potentially. Lava Spike. Some 6/6s now with Death Shadows. Price of Progress would be lethal if it resolves. 7 life. And there it is. Price of Progress. Really the reason to play Burn. If you think this card is good, sleeve up Burn. If you don't think it's good in the meta, it is not where you want to be. We've got a Force of Will and no blue card as Burn picks this one up in a very deep matchup. I mean, there's a lot of decisions to be made. Looks like Matt actually running Berserk in the deck. Something that could potentially get there with those Death Shadows out of nowhere. I know the modern builds run the Teamer Battle Rage. We do have access to Berserk in this format for just 1 mana. Well, I actually really like that matchup. A lot of plays to consider. That is all for this one, but don't worry, there is a lot more. You can check out our older videos, and we're always putting out new videos from ELD's Time Vault Games in Bellingham, Massachusetts. If you want to help the channel, of course, you can like, subscribe, share, tap that notification bell so you can know the next time our new videos come out. Thanks for watching.